Okay, so we are back doing a Q&A. Corin's going to ask me questions this time. So,
Do you want to give them an update of where you're at or anything like that, or just straight into the questions? They need a little where we are.
where are we?
You can tell them. 7 months in.
Yeah, but we're going to do a 7-month update.
Okay.
That's it. That's where we're at. The summer's over. Summer was good and busy.
Okay. So first question, just basic. What is the hardest part of motherhood? Hardest part
Oh.
about being a mother?
Right now or overall? The whole
Overall.
since. Well, in the beginning, I would say all the nursing stuff and everything that went along with that. It's just a lot with, I don't know, just everything that's involved in that. It was like really hard to get started with it and then keeping up with it and everything. Now that part is a lot easier. I don't know, I guess that it just always changes. So like as soon as we're like, oh, she's sleeping through the night, then she's not sleeping through the night anymore. It lasts like a couple of days and then she's teething and she's fussy because of that. So it's just like always changing. Like once you feel like something's going well, it's like, just kidding. It's not. And just like I was saying to you yesterday, like there's no like rule book. Like I don't know anything that you don't know. I just look things up and there's like no secret rule book. So it's just like how do you figure out what works best for
So
the
you would
baby?
say figuring out like what to do is the toughest part.
Well, no, it's just like how do you know if you're doing it right or what's gonna make the most sense? So I don't know.
So that brings me to my next question. So to that point, like you have done a lot of reading prior to having the baby, and then
Yeah.
still now you do a lot of reading.
Yeah.
How accurate would you say that information is on the internet, and the information that you've gotten and stuff that you've tried? How accurate has it been? And then
Okay, let me answer that first part. So, Nix's pediatrician says don't trust the internet. Ask her, not Dr. Google.
Mhm.
But I like to ask Dr. Google and see what answers I get. But I think it depends where you get the information from. So I think if there's some things you can find whatever you want on the internet. If you ask the question a certain way, you can find answers that support that argument. Or so for example, baby-led weaning. So that is giving the baby actual pieces of food versus pureeing everything. So we do like a mix of some food, some purees, but I like to give her pieces of food. So if
so
I
you're
go on the
saying that
internet,
you wanted to at first, so you found articles that backed what you wanted?
well, I actually had like friends who told me that they did baby-led weaning and never gave purees. And
So you
like,
looked for articles that had information
No,
behind it.
I didn't. I'm giving you an example
Okay,
that
no,
if
but I'm
I
saying,
if
like-
I ask the question to the internet, like is baby-led weaning good, I could find pros and cons, and depending what I'm looking for, I could go to the negative list and find that like X amount of kids choked and died because of this versus going strictly towards puree. So there's pros and cons for both. So I mean, when you ask the internet, you can find whatever you want, whether it's supporting baby-led weaning or whether it's supporting breastfeeding or whatever it is. But the books and things that I've read, there's a lot of research that goes into it. So like you have to just find what is interesting you and then make your own decisions. So like, I mean, that's a difficult question because it just
Are you
depends.
saying it's a good question?
I'm saying it's a difficult question to answer because there's going to be pros and cons for everything, and it's just you have to do what you feel most comfortable with.
Well, I wasn't going to give you softball questions, okay? I'm coming with the hard-hitting questions, the stuff that the
Okay.
people want to hear.
Okay.
So a follow-up on that question, do you and it might not be Google or something, but do you have like one source that you like to rely on, or something that you find yourself going back to more than other sources or something?
So right now, no, because there's a lot of different books that like I'll read a little bit of a certain book or something that I like. But when I was pregnant,
Any good books you want to recommend?
No.
Okay.
When I was pregnant, I was really into podcasts, and we listened to a bunch of podcasts together. And I liked. Let me get the name of it here. So one of them I liked was the pregnancy podcast by Vanessa Merton or something. I don't remember her name. But I also liked the Birthful podcast, and that was like a woman who was a doula and like all about natural pregnancies, and I had an epidural and stuff, but it was just more about how to do things naturally with your giving birth, pregnancy, even like the first, couple months once the baby's born. And I really liked that. I thought that was a lot of good information. And then in terms of books, I liked Expecting Better versus the What to Expect When You're Expecting book, because I thought Expecting Better talked more about, okay, if I can't eat red meat, why and what's going to happen, versus like, don't eat red meat, it's the worst thing ever, and you don't really understand why that's a problem when you're pregnant. So I like that. And then now, I don't know, it just depends what stage you're in with your kid. What do you want to read?
Another follow-up on that question. This is a big question.
Okay.
Well, seeing how you have, your YouTube channel, are you comfortable giving advice to friends, or do you tend to just maybe tell what you're doing and, let them take it as they may?
Well, I mean, that I have a lot of friends right now who are either pregnant or just had a baby, or are in a very similar stage as us. I have just, I think, only one friend who has a toddler, and then the rest are either have like newborns or pregnant right now. So I do have friends who ask me, what products we like, and I say, if they ask me, I'm happy to tell them what my experience is, but I also recognize that what works for us does not work for everybody else. And I also have people who give me advice, people from work or family, and what worked for them might not work for us. Like, every baby is different. And I also know people who say, like, something that worked with their first kid didn't work with their second kid. So you just have to recognize that every baby is an individual. And if people give me advice, I kind of just take it if I want and don't take it if I don't want to. And I feel the same when someone asks me. Like, I just have to recognize that what works for us isn't like the holy grail. So
moving on to the husband's role, what do you expect out of the husband? Because we had a conversation about like putting clothes away and stuff like that. So what is your expectations there?
Well, first of all, I'm just curious. Do you think I have too high of expectations and just of you?
This is a Q&A
life?
for you, not for me.
Okay, fine. Well, I expect that, it's our baby. It's not just my baby. So I don't think that everything should just fall on me because I'm the mom. And I don't think that everything should fall on me because I'm the woman and I'm the wife, in general, in our relationship. And it doesn't. I mean, there's a lot of things that you do that I don't do, like outside with the lawn and the dogs and things like that. You do that. And then there's things like inside that I do that you don't, always do. So there's things like that. But when it comes to the baby, I think that it should be shared responsibility. So, for example, when I have things that relate to breastfeeding, obviously you can't physically participate in any of that, but that doesn't mean that when there's dishes for pump stuff that you can't help, and you do help, and I expect that, and I think that it shouldn't just fall on me because I'm the one who has to physically do that stuff. And then just everything with the baby. I think it should be a shared responsibility, and that is my expectation, that it's a shared responsibility and it doesn't just fall on me because I'm the mom.
Okay. What has been the scariest moment that you've had with Nyx?
The scariest moment?
Yeah, like did something happen, or like do you worry still, like occasionally I'll say to you, just check if she's breathing or something like that, like
Well,
has
I
there
mean,
been
we
any
just
moment?
check if she's breathing all the time, just because I think as new parents and when you have a baby and she likes to cover her face, I think we just like to check. But probably the one time when she fell out of the walker was scary. And then, I mean, that's really it. I haven't really had any, like, scares with her. Oh, remember she got, like, heat rash or something, but and when we thought she maybe had torticollis, that
What about when
just
she was
overall in
allergic to
general.
blueberries? Were you
Yeah,
scared?
she
Or
was allergic to blueberries. No, not really, because it was kind of quick. It wasn't like, I think if, like, I noticed she was having trouble breathing, but what had happened was we gave her blueberries, I think, on the way to swim lessons, and right after she ate them, she just, like, threw up everything that she had in there, and it was, like, quick, and she wasn't even really, like, fussy with it. She just, like, everything came right back out, and I was like, oh, that was weird, but it was, like, a lot. It was, like, covered her car seat. And then on the way home from swim lessons, I was like, okay, let's try to give her blueberries again. I didn't think it was related to the blueberries. So I gave her the blueberries again, and the same thing, but this time she was, like, crying, and she was, like, really upset. So I was like, this is definitely a reaction to the blueberries. But she wasn't, like, her throat swelling, her face swelling, or anything like that. Like some of the things that happen when kids are allergic to things. So it wasn't scary, more so just kind of like, okay, never giving her blueberries again while she's a baby. Maybe, once she's a year, we can try them again. But that wasn't really scary. And then I would say when I thought she had torticollis, I think that was scary because I was looking on the internet and just things were saying that if you don't correct it, it can lead to all these different issues later in life. And I was more concerned because I was like, oh my gosh, I did this because I only hold her a certain way or feed her a certain way, that she's only looking a certain way. When we sit in the car, we only sit on one side of her. So I was just scared that kind of like, okay, how do we correct this? But that's when the pediatrician said, don't look at the internet for things, come to the doctor and see. But on the way into that doctor's appointment, she had gotten like a rash all over her body that she had never had before. But it just happened that to be the day we were going to the doctor, and the doctor was like, it's heat rash. So that's really it. We've never had any, knock on wood, major scares with her.
so I get a lot of questions from people, so you must get a lot of questions, like just comments.
Who asked you
No,
questions?
just comments like, oh, is your wife still working? Like, has she gone back to work and stuff like that? So I'm guessing that a lot of women don't go back to work sometimes after they have their baby. And we're very fortunate because your mother helps us out with the baby and watches Nyx when we're either at work or working from home or something. So did it ever cross your mind did it ever cross your mind to like leave work and stay home and like not ever go back to work? Because to me that seems like a crazy idea that someone can just not go back to work when they have a baby.
Well, what, a crazy idea financially, or a crazy
No, a
idea
crazy
like
idea
just
to
not
to
working?
pick up and like leave your job because you had a baby. Like a job is, I don't know, people are there for a while and then all of a sudden to just leave is like,
Yeah.
Because you have a baby is like, a baby changes your life, but it's
Yeah.
not supposed to like make you
But
leave
I think
your job
that's
and
a
stuff.
very like individual decision for people, because like I've always been a type of person, like I've had a job since like the youngest you can have a job with working papers, like I think 14 or something. Like I've always worked. I've always wanted to like make my own money, and like even when you're a kid and you have like a lemonade stand or you like find ways to make money, like I've always worked. So I was never like, the second I have kids I'm not gonna work. Like I've always just worked, and I like my job. Like I genuinely like my job. So I think that's I'm lucky in that sense that you know, work is work and then you come home for your family. But I understand why people don't want to go back to work, you know. You have somebody else who basically raises your child. Like, my mom spends more time with our kid than we do. So, you know, I think that I can understand that completely. But I also think it's an individual decision for people, because maybe some people want to be a stay-at-home mom and they can't afford to, or you know, whatever the case is. But also the cost of daycare is crazy. So for some people, if you have multiple kids, maybe it doesn't make sense for one parent to work. So I just think it varies person to person, but I don't think it was ever like a question for us, like for one of us to stay home.
Okay.
So.
And then just one more question I had on traveling, because we've traveled together with the baby, and you've traveled by yourself. What advice or tips would you give to people on traveling? Like, would you say don't use the train?
Oh, no. I mean, so to be clear, we have traveled by car.
Planes, trains, and automobiles.
We have done planes, trains, and automobiles, and they've all
movie
been.
We tried watching last night.
They've all been for, like, the train was like a 12, 13 train ride. The drives we've done like a 15-hour car ride back to New York. We've done flight to California. So, like, we've gone far distances. We're not just talking like an hour car ride. And I would say for the train, we did the Amtrak train, and I would definitely do the train again. The only thing I would do differently, because I was by myself with the baby, is I would make sure I bought 2 seats. So 1 seat for me and 1 seat for the baby, because when she was awake, now that she's 7 months and she is like, she rode on my lap for the whole time. She was like kicking the person next to us. We didn't have enough space. That was really difficult. We made it through, but it would have been nice for when she was awake to like have her sitting in her own seat, because she can sit on her own. That would be the only thing I would change there, but I would definitely do that again. I thought in terms of going to New York, driving versus the train, it was nice to kind of not have to worry about driving and just kind of like sit there and not be tired. And we slept overnight versus when we drive, you know, it's just usually the two of us switching back and forth. So I would definitely do
back and forth, or just switching once?
Okay, well, I would definitely do the train again. Cars, I would say now that Nix is definitely more alert and active in the car, having things for her to do, because when I took the train with the baby, but then my mom and I drove back to Illinois, like in the same kind of week. So, I had some things for her to do in the car, but we also were driving during a time where she typically sleeps, so that helps. If you can travel during a time when the baby typically sleeps, late at night, early in the morning, that definitely helps, because then they're not awake and just kind of fussy. So the car ride back, my mom drove most of the way. I only drove like 2 hours and she drove the rest, and the baby was fine. It wasn't bad at all. Planes, so I have, and maybe we'll do like a separate video on like travel things, just because we have traveled a lot. We have a trip coming up at the end of the month where we're flying, a trip in November where we're flying. So we've traveled a lot with the baby, and I've done it by myself, and I've also done it with you. And I would say I love having a stroller that can fit in the overhead bin. There are not many out there that actually fit, but the Zoe strollers actually fold up and fit in the overhead bin, which I think is the best, because if you see them throw your stroller down the chute, they do not care. And yeah, I like to
They'll throw a heavy luggage on top.
They don't care. So I just like to make sure like that it fit in the overhead bin, so that way when we get to where we're going, we're not worrying about a broken stroller. That has helped, and also pushing her through the airport, because I think the first time we flew back to New York, we didn't even bring a stroller at all. So I was like carrying her through the airport, and that was like with a wrap, and that was hard. So having a stroller that fits in the overhead bin has been clutch.
Well, just, you don't have to give every detail in traveling.
No, I know. I'm just saying, like,
like, what about, I'm more curious, like, people's comments to the baby? Are you cool? I mean, like, just like...
We haven't really had
No,
many.
I mean, like, yesterday, apple picking, people say things, like, it's just, like, you have to acknowledge people and stuff like that, because you'll get comments.
I mean, if they say something rude, like, I just ignore them, because, but I mean, we've been lucky that like when we fly, I think a lot of times if you fly and they don't try to put somebody next to you. So like we flew a few times and had an open seat next to us, which is helpful. And so like you don't have a person right next to you like making comments, which is nice, because if the baby cries, like you just kind of
You're saying when you fly they put an open seat next to you?
No, you know how like when you fly and they like people have to go up for their seat assignment?
Yeah.
Well, I think when you fly, like, they try to leave the seat next. Like, if you have, like, an infant, they try to leave it open.
Oh.
Yeah, because I've been on, like, a few flights, like, that we had an open seat next to her.
Oh.
So, I mean, unless it's a full flight. But it's just nice when you don't have someone right next to you and you can kind of just, like, relax and not have someone, like, right next to you and the baby's crying. But no, I haven't, when she's like cried on the plane, she hasn't like cried for the whole flight or anything, and nobody says like, oh my gosh, make that baby stop crying or something. So if they did, I would just ignore them and be like, you're rude, because obviously I'm not enjoying her crying either. She's not enjoying crying. So I don't know. Overall, travel it's good. And I like it because like we're obviously people who like to travel, so getting her used to it early and kind of out of her environment, I think is good for future stuff.
And then last question. What is your favorite part about being a mother, and would you change anything?
Oh, my favorite part. That's hard.
Told you.
I think it's just interesting watching her do new things. Like right now she's like scooting herself across the floor, and she will just like wake up and like laugh at herself and just kind of find ways to entertain herself, and I love just
or like when she went to sleep
her
last night and was like laughing in her crib.
Yes, we put her down for a nap and she's just like laughing at herself and just like having the best time of ever. It just makes me happy like watching her do those things, and it's like I always think, like, what is she thinking and why is she so happy? Like, what makes her so happy? That I, like, really enjoy that, and also just watching her learn new things. And so we're going to be taking her to Disney, and I'm excited to see that and her reaction to different things in new environments. So I would say that, and I also just love like the curious phase of like her touching everything and looking at different things and discovering things. So far I think that's been it ever since maybe like 5 months when she was just more curious about things. I think has been really exciting.
That's
So
all I
don't
got.
know. There was a second part to the
Would you
question.
change
Would
anything?
I change anything? I mean, I wish I could spend more time with her during the week, because when I get home at the end of the day, it's usually like dinner and get her ready for bed, maybe a bath, things like that, or spend more time in the morning, because I feel like she's generally the happiest first thing in the morning. Like this morning I woke up to her just laughing at herself. So I would say to be able to spend more time with her would be the only thing. So.
Well, good job. Those are all the questions that I have.
Good questions. All right. So I guess we'll do a 7-month update, maybe a travel one, and that's it.
If you have any questions, all 7 viewers, put them in the comments.
Let us know.